Hello, Abuja. You're welcome to today's edition of Sabi Law on the Beat FM. I remain Onyekachi Umar, and as always, I'm here with my learned friend,
Kenechukwu Agwo.
So today, we are looking at, can violence and lack of materials cause nullification of elections in Nigeria? There can be an election in Nigeria or in any part of Nigeria without the availability of election materials. Materials here will include the electronic readers and every other thing that comes or required in election. So Mr. Kenechukwu will be answering this question. So let me repeat the question again, Mr. Kenechukwu. Can violence and lack of materials cause the nullification of elections in Nigeria?
All right, first of all, any election in any part of Nigeria can be nullified by an appropriate tribunal or court. Generally, an election will be nullified by a tribunal or court when there is clear, positive, credible, and overwhelming evidence that shows that election was not substantially conducted in accordance with the Electoral Act, and that the non-compliance substantially affected the result of the election. So, until you convince a tribunal or court that there was a substantial non-compliance, I'm sure you must have been hearing that word, substantial non-compliance, in the conduct of an election contrary to the Electoral Act, and that it also affected the election result, an election will not be nullified. Consequently, saying that there was violence and lack of electoral materials will cause a nullification of election where it can be proved that there are substantial non-compliance with the Electoral Act and that they substantially affected the result of the final result of an election.
So we take it that it's a question of fact.
Yeah.
You must prove that the violence or the lack of material was substantial. It was huge, enormous to have affected the outcome of an election. And not that during an election someone was slapped. Maybe probably slapping one person on the queue may not affect elections. But in a situation where there was a gun battle, probably it could affect an election.
Yeah.
So it's a question of fact. So it is important that during election, gather as enough evidence as you can, because it's an evidence-based affair. The court would always want to look and say, okay, with the evidence laid before me, I can say that there was a substantial non-compliance.
Yeah, substantial non-compliance means that a huge part of that the law was so violated that you did not comply with it in a reasonably amount. I'm being careful not to use some because those things cannot be. They are not mathematically you can't measure it mathematically, but it shows that the effect, the action or the things that happened have the capacity to affect the outcomes of the final results. All right, so for this, if you see the Electoral Act 2022 and also the long-standing decision of the Supreme Court in Buhari versus Obasanjo 2003, 17 Nigerian Weekly Law Report, Part 850 at 510. You can also see the decision of the Court of Appeal in the case of Okafor Okorafia, and another versus Honorable Agwo and another. This is 2010. You can find it in Law Pavilion Electronic Law Reports, 47008 Court of Appeal judgments.
All right, that is it for today's edition of Sabi Law on the Beat FM. Go get your PVC and ensure you participate in the elections. Stay safe. Bye from Sabi Law.
Go Sabi Law.